All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm doing this a lot less frequently these days. Things are awkward all over the world. And these, of course, are the awkward interviews. I have probably my coolest guest yet, Susan Bro. I don't know if many of you know her name, but she is the founder of the Heather Heyer Foundation. Those of you who know me well, and know about my music, Heather's untimely passing was what took me out of retirement. I had decided I wasn't going to focus at all on my music anymore. But when I heard what happened, and, felt almost guilt that I was no longer on the streets, alongside her, and I was at home safe with my kids. I cried for her and I went right back to the studio. And I made probably one of my top 3 songs ever that, meaningful wise to me. Anyway, Susan is Heather's mother. And Susan founded the Heather Heyer Foundation, following, go ahead.
Technically co-founded. Alfred Wilson was co-founder.
Okay, I apologize. So co-founded the Heather Heyer Foundation, which collected donations to support other activists trying to do work like Heather. And as it says on the website for the foundation, Heather was an activist, but not a well-known activist. She wasn't, an online influencer. And, one other thing that really stuck out to me was the way you guys described how she approached society and interpersonal interactions, that she wasn't force feeding people information. She was asking people why they felt the way they did and learning from them too. And that is the way to do it. And what happened to Heather, as you said, Susan, they tried to silence her and all they did was amplify her. I didn't know Heather, I'm sad to say. I only know what happened to her, and I know her memory, and I know the work that you've done since. I also know that it is August 9th, and on August 12th, it will be 5 years since it happened. I've never lost a child. I lost my mother at a really young age, and that almost completely destroyed me. So I can only imagine what Susan has gone through. And it's incredibly admirable how she translated grief and despair into something positive like Heather would have wanted. So Susan, thank you so much for joining me, particularly as we get close to August 12th. I'm really excited to hear from you, your memories of Heather, as well as your thoughts following what happened and the work that you've been doing and you plan to do going forward.
Wow. And how many years do we have to talk about all this?
As long as you need.
No, I actually have company coming in 45 minutes.
Oh, shoot. All right. So talk quick.
We're good. Heather was wild and woolly, feisty. Her favorite drink was what I'm told is a skinny bitch, which is cheap whiskey and Diet Coke. And she smoked Newports, menthol, always menthol. When I heard they're going to outlaw menthols, I said Heather would be mad.
Yeah, so did I, so I get it.
She was passionate. She was extremely hard-headed and stubborn and fierce-minded on what she cared about. She was also extremely tender-hearted. She was full-on Gemini. Birthday's May 29th. And she went a long way to influencing family and friends to pay attention, to focus. The phrase she had adopted on her Facebook page sometime in the year before she was killed was, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. and she lived by that. She felt it was her purpose to share events of hate crimes and violence that had happened, to share stories, other people's stories, and to discuss them with other people. But she was also pretty vehement, not always kind. People say, oh, she loved everybody. No, she didn't. She had some very strong opinions on who she would put up with and who she wouldn't put up with. Not an easy child to raise, no strong-willed child ever is, but I was determined that my children would be full on themselves, that they would know they had options in life, and that I would support and encourage them to be independent and strong. And I've always had a philosophy with my adult children, and I still do. I'm not going to bug you. I will maybe once in a while nudge like, hey, how's it going? But if you don't answer me, it's because I know you're busy, and I don't take it personally. But I also don't leave areas to be regretted. I was not a really good mother growing as the kids were growing up, and focused way too much on my job and myself. Had fits of real depression. I was a hoarder for a while, and the kids had kind of a rough life, but we had discussed all that as I came out of it, as I was in therapy, as they grew, and I have no regrets with my kids, and I try to keep it that way, because you never know. You never know. And as for you not knowing the pain of losing a child, that's why I do what I do. I don't want other parents to know that pain.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. A lot of this sounded, when you were describing Heather, it sounded to me like someone describing me. Heather's Jewish, right?
Pardon me?
Heather's Jewish?
No.
Oh, not okay. So that's the only difference. It sounded like a Jewish last name. But yes, so similar. I don't think anyone would describe me as loving everyone. Although as I've moved further toward abolition and further away from some of the aspects of anti-fascism, I've become more of a lover and less of a fighter. And it does seem to me like, people with that passion, and people that you might describe as hard-headed or not easy to raise, also are the same people that like have such strong love in their hearts and care so much, and are willing to put themselves at risk. And I take all of this really personally, because this is me as well, and people don't always understand it. They don't always appreciate it. And at the same time, there's also an element to it, as you expressed on the website, of white guilt. If you're unable to accept that and use it to benefit others, then you're kind of a step behind, because you should have, like, you shouldn't have guilt to the point of like, I personally did this, but you should have guilt in knowing that the results of that are still playing out today, the results of what maybe your ancestors did. And not only that, but we see with the 13th Amendment enabling legalized slavery in prison and jail today, not much has really changed. As we saw in Charlottesville 5 years ago, that was absolutely terrifying. And I can say as a Jew, it was particularly terrifying, because they're chanting like blood and soil and Jews will not replace us. I don't think there's a Jew in this country who's not fearful of another Holocaust. And that's not even, it's not even considering Black, brown, and indigenous people, trans people, who are impacted much more so in this country on a daily basis. Do you remember like what was going through Heather's head? Did you guys have a conversation leading up to Charlottesville? Did you know she was going? Do you know why she went?
Some of this I've learned in retrospect. Some of this has been court testimony. Some of this has been people talking to me about it. Over the last 5 years, I'm always gradually getting bits and pieces of it. The last time I talked to Heather was August 1st, because we had a thing where when we got paid, I used to be a school teacher, had cancer, surgery didn't go well, so I quit teaching, and then I worked as a secretary for the cooperative extension office in the county. And so when we got paid, we'd go out to dinner, and dinner with Heather consisted of her talking a lot, and I'd listen a lot. And I had been single for a long time before I married my current husband. So I knew being single, even if you have boyfriends or significant others of any kind, you'll have some conversation, but you have a lot bottled up that you want to say to somebody. So when she got with Mom, it was blah, 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 hands going. And that particular time, she talked at length. And some of it was about the Unite the Right rally that was coming. I knew that the KKK and had come to Charlottesville before. I personally always thought they were a bunch of frippin' idiots. I had heard of Oath Keepers. At that time, that's really all I'd heard about. I hadn't heard about any of the others. We talked briefly about it. We agreed that they were nuts. I didn't ask, was she going? She never said she was going, and I assumed it could be problematic, but not necessarily having had a clue as to how violent it could be. Regardless, that's probably a blessing for me, not fearing, but also respecting her autonomy as an adult. But that particular time, we talked longer than usual. We went out to the car to say goodbye, and we hugged longer than usual, kept kissing each other. Said, this is so funny. I said, it's not like we'll never see each other again, because we normally would see each other on August the 13th when we got paid again. And then she was gone. She did message me at work the next day and asked me what my social security number was. She said, I know your birthday. And I'm really funny about sharing that kind of information. I said, well, I gave it to her because I trusted her. Besides, I knew she'd get it out of me anyway. She was that hard-headed. But I said, why do you want to know? She said, well, I'm going to do one of those retirement funds and I want to list you as beneficiary. Now, typical of Heather, she never finished the paperwork. But I said, well, okay, but I don't die. I'd rather have you than the money. And she said, I'll try not to. And we said, I love you. I love you. And that was the last time I spoke to her.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense.
Feels like premonition looking back at it.
It
but
does.
So it was, I'm just happy I didn't have any regrets with her.
Me too. Me too. So when you heard what happened, do you remember how like your first reaction?
Do I remember? That's
shock,
like,
right?
Branded into my brain.
Is it? Okay.
Oh my God, yeah. So Heather would frequently bring friends home to live. My son would from time to time as well. And they'd stay for a month or so, maybe a week or so, and then move on. But she had brought her friend Justin to live with us, and he was here for a couple of years.
Wow.
He turned 21 while he was living here. And they worked together. They were like that couple on Will and Grace, Karen and Jack, I believe. That's who they were like. And Justin called me, and he never called me unless something was wrong. So my first words were, what's wrong? I'm thinking he's got a flat tire. He's gotten in trouble. He needs to borrow some money. What's going on? he was crying and sobbing, and he kept saying, that car, I think she got hit by that car. I'm like, what are you talking about? Who? Maybe his mother? You know, I don't know. He said, I think Heather got hit by that car. Okay, what are you talking about? By then I'm getting a little panicked, and he calmed down enough to tell me that she had gone to the rally and that a car had run over her. But I didn't know it really any more than that. And I said, well, where is she? He said, well, Marissa's at the hospital, and the hospital's asking for next of kin. Now, I was at my best friend's house, which is even further away from Charlottesville than I am by about 15 minutes. And she has bad phone reception. So I was outside on the porch and I screamed, Kathy, got to go to town. Something's happened to Heather. So she comes out, she starts driving. It's a 45-minute trip. I'm calling the only 2 hospitals we have in town. Both of them keep telling me we don't have a patient by that name. My son called and said he had been watching the rally on TV from his house in another state, and that he saw the car attack. He called Heather's phone to see if she was okay. Somebody else picked up her phone and said they didn't know whose phone it was.
Jesus.
And he told him to turn the phone in to the police. They said they would. That phone has never shown up again. She hadn't had it very long, so none of us, she'd had it like 3 or 4 days maybe. So none of us are really positive what it looked like. It's never been recovered. Finally begged Justin to tell Marissa I would never bug her again if she would just call me and tell me where they were. So this part I don't remember. I did call my parents and said, please pray, something's happened to Heather. She must be unconscious at the best, because she would call me herself if she could. And Marissa said that the ER was barricaded. You had to go to the opposite end of the same street to McKim Hall. Well, I knew McKim Hall because I worked there as a switchboard operator when I was pregnant with Heather. And my husband was out of town. I told Kathy to park the car and wait for him to get there, that I was going in. Heather needed me. I was determined to get through check-in as quickly as possible. So I was super polite, super screaming inside, but trying to be very polite. They searched my bag for weapons, and I told them who I was and who I was there for. And they said, stand over here, and they kind of ignored me. Hold on a second, someone's coming in. Hold on. Oh, it's my husband. Okay. And 2 women grabbed me on either side and walked me up the ramp. And I still am not sure who they were, if they were chaplains or detectives or exactly what they were. And they walked me to this room, and Marissa stood there looking kind of sad. And this man in a suit and tie introduced himself as detective. And you know, I've met him on a couple of occasions since then, and I can't hold on to his name for love nor money. Said your daughter was pronounced. And my head went down and I let out an ungodly wail. But being of the German mindset and Scotch-Irish, German-American, my next thought was, what do I need to do? And so I proceeded to call people. I called her father in Florida, told him. He was beside himself because it caught him completely unawares. He knew nothing of any of it. I called his parents to explain that he needed help, and they thought I was a crank call and hung up on me. I called my son and said, call your grandparents in Florida. Then I called my parents, and then I called Justin, and then I tried to call her waitressing job to say she wouldn't be coming in, but they were closed.
I can't believe you thought to call her job.
Well, I had done waitressing and restaurant work for a number of years myself.
Understood.
Job, and I know that if somebody doesn't show, the shift's got to be covered. Wow. But that's how my mind compartmentalizes. That was how I blocked my grief, is go into work mode.
Everyone responds so differently. My sister, when my mom died, my sister, who was younger than me in her 20s, was more like you, and she was the rock. I nearly, killed myself with drugs. So you never know. And obviously, as we talked about, you were able to turn it into something really positive. And I want to end on the positive. And again, just so we're clear, I recognize how difficult all of this is. And if there's anything that I ask you that you don't want to talk about, just say so. Absolutely no hard feelings. I will totally understand.
We got through the worst of it.
Yeah.
Here's what will happen. I've allowed interviews all day today, and I've allowed the last 2 weeks. You are the last interview of this year. There will be no more, and I will have company here for the next 3 days, and have doctor appointments after they leave. And then Saturday and Sunday, I will probably sit down and not move for 2 days.
I'm so sorry. I know.
It's just life, and then I survive and I go on again. But I compartmentalize it. It doesn't come through.
It's so
of people, though, I will be doing ordinary things these past couple of weeks, and all of a sudden it will hit me. I used to have a little girl.
Yep, exactly. And the anniversaries, the anniversaries are so hard. The birthdays, the day of their death.
Mother's Day sucks big time.
Oh, God. Mother's Day, absolutely. Another horrible day.
But we're not special. People die, and we hurt when people die because we love them, and we don't stop loving them. So we're not going to stop hurting, and it's okay. It's just part of life.
Yes. Yep. And we can let it destroy us or not. And you're not. And that's incredible. The questions I'm not sure about, that aren't as positive, I suspect it will be less emotionally charged as having to describe your own feelings in the midst of an totally not believable tragedy. It's more about your thoughts almost from like a socio-political perspective. We've come to learn that James Shields, I believe is his name, is not the only James Fields is not the only piece of shit who used his car to try to kill someone. It's happened dozens of times since. It's a relatively new and commonly used Nazi tactic.
The first time I heard it was when they did in Madrid, and I looked at my husband and I said, that's going to be a trend.
Prescient. Yeah, I mean, never could you have imagined it would affect you so closely, but yeah, I remember that too. I remember when that happened. And I'll be honest with you though, and take this for what it is, feel free to judge me. Those were leftists, if I remember correctly. Those were leftists in Madrid. And I don't recall if there were fatalities. And I want to say 100% never am I okay with the loss of innocent life with whether it's a human or an animal or a plant for that matter. However, I recall feeling excited by what happened in Madrid, that like, oh, this is a crazy thing that like is going to scare the shit out of the rich white man. It feels really different when it's a Nazi killing a not rich white leftist beautiful soul. Anyway, that's a side note.
I get what you're saying, but
Yeah.
what I have been saying lately, that anytime we start looking at groups of people in terms of us and them, mothers and fathers will bury their children.
Yes. And I don't want to go too far down this road. My only comment on that is that, and please don't take this as any form of disrespect to you. It is a privilege for anyone to think that way, because if you're the victim of persecution, of police violence, you feel like it's because of who you are, and how could anyone tell me not to focus on that?
Yeah, I completely understand. I'm just saying
Yeah.
there.
No, I hear you. And as a result, that is, you know, I'm constantly learning, as we all should be. And that is why, as an abolitionist, I believe that anyone is capable of transformation. Even 99% of those lunatics holding tiki torches in Charlottesville, they are the result of generations of disinformation. And there is a way to counteract that. No one is born a monster. No one's born evil. So I think fundamentally we do agree on that. And so having said that, though, what emotions went through your mind regarding her murder, and what was it like dealing with police officers? Did you feel like they were trying to help you solve this, bring you peace? Did you ever experience an inkling that they weren't a big fan of Heather because of who she was?
Yes, yes, and yes. All of the above. If anyone has studied the Charlottesville event in any depth, you know that there were definite issues with the police leading up to the event and during the event. By the time the funeral came, and prior to that, I made a point to let the police know I was counting on them to solve the murder. I was counting on them to convict the murderer. They gave us the utmost police protection. They gave me the utmost respect. And I had made a point to reach out to the police to say, how do we work on this together? And I referred people, knowing that was because I was white, I could do that. Knowing full well, had I not been white, that would not have played out the same way. I will also tell you that we suspected disrespect at times by the police, but couldn't always prove it. I do, for the most part, feel that the police that I personally worked with were working positively towards the end with me. I got hints that they were not doing that necessarily with other people, and particularly other activists. And in the federal sentencing, they played a tape for us of film footage that included police audio that had not been played with audio in the state trial. And as the police watched the peaceful protesters come down Water Street, which was on the opposite side of the downtown mall from the statue, on the opposite side of the street from the violence. The police said, what are those motherfuckers up to now? As they turned up 4th Street. They happened to catch film footage of him ramming the crowd. And that was an essential piece of evidence in court. But there was a gasp and a knowing nod that went across all of us as we heard it. It's like, oh yeah, that's what we figured you thought. People are complicated. Systems are not designed to protect people. Police are not there to protect and serve. They are there to uphold rules as they see fit. We have a different model of policing now than we once had. I'm not entirely an abolitionist at this point, but I'm certainly closer to it than I once was. And systems, oh my God, systems have to be in place. I will tell you that part of the work that I still do part-time is, and I say part-time because I'm officially retired now, is working in helping train police departments on hate crimes, hate crime laws, the outcomes of hate crimes, the resources that the Jabara Hire No Hate Act has made available. As I said, it's complicated.
Yeah.
I'm
So you clearly do have quite the complicated relationship. You needed them, but knew the truth about them all at the same time. Knew your privilege in being able to coordinate in the way that you were. You are like so many other people, whether they've been through a tragedy or not, whether they've had to deal with the police or not, who over the last 2 years, over the last couple months, have moved ever closer to abolitionism because of incidents like Uvalde, where it wasn't a young Black man being shot for no reason or being suffocated for nearly 10 minutes for no reason. It was a bunch of school kids. And not only did the cops not do anything, they prevented parents from helping, and they then lied about it, and they then tried to stop the investigation, and on and on and on and on, right? So there is no judgment, and nor is there any pressure to declare yourself an abolitionist. As I said, we are all always learning. And I want to say that the work that you're doing is critically important. And for those Antifa and abolitionists out there who are screaming at ACAB and unfollowing me now for saying that,
and never followed me.
What's that?
And they never followed me.
No, I'm sure not. I shouldn't have said that. I'm going to make a lot of enemies. What I mean is the 10 Demands that I co-founded, that organization, we created the 10 Demands for Justice to pave the road toward abolition. Every reform chips away at the system. Of course, there are tons of groups doing like unbelievably important work with those directly impacted as other groups strive to move us toward abolition. A great example is prison pen pals. Because you're an abolitionist and think prisons shouldn't exist, does that mean you shouldn't try to help the guys or the human beings who are locked in cages now? Of course not. And the same goes for police departments, what you're doing. As long as we have them, they need to be as transparent and accountable as possible. And they need to respond to events as best as possible. As we're developing, mental health crisis response teams, as long as their cops are still going, they have to start learning how to de-escalate. I just wrote an article for Antagonist magazine about why police are not the answer to hate crimes or mass shootings. You doing the work you do is not in opposition to that. It's following that. As a result, they need you, as long as they exist, to know what to do, since what they've been doing doesn't work.
And they're not talking just to me, they're talking to a number of families. I don't know how much I can share, so I won't, but
Okay.
These are families who also have laws written about their loved ones, and also not all the stories are wonderful about how the police responded. But these are also the trainings that we do are because police departments have been offered this and then they choose to accept it. And I commend them every time I speak to them that they have made the effort to seek this training. And I implore them to make use of what the Jabara Hire No Hate Act offers in terms of resources, streamlined processes, explain why we need to acknowledge hate crimes. You know, there's work here, there's persuasion here. I'm trying to model myself somewhat after Heather in the concept of tell me why you think this way. Here's why I think this way. Here's what we need to do, you know, and use my teacher and mom encouragement to pull them along.
Well, I think it's absolutely beautiful that you're modeling your daughter. And, you know, it's interesting that you know, as you described your approach, it reminded me, my daughter, one of my daughters is going to, well, they're both leaving for school in a few weeks. One of them is going to a school in upstate New York, and we were just there visiting, and there was like an hour and a half speech from security, which the vast majority of which I couldn't handle. And when it was over, to the chagrin of my wife, I walked up to them, and she was probably terrified about what I was going to say. But what I asked them was, oh, go ahead.
Hey, Kim, I need you to check the door and see if Hopi's here. The thunder was loud, but then there was a thud at the door. Sorry.
No problem. And I know we're running out of time. I could talk to you forever. What happened is I asked them, do you carry weapons? But I asked them in a way, even looking at me, they weren't thinking, uh-oh. They heard it in my voice. I presented it the right way, that they were like, and their answer, I was very pleased, was no. And they explained why in a way that I was also very pleased about. But I knew they were honest, and like, again, had I approached them the way people would expect AWKWORD to approach them, it wouldn't have gone well. And that, you know, again, is your point. Since we're running out of time, I know you've got so much going on, and I didn't know you've been doing these interviews for weeks, and I can't imagine how exhausted you are.
Honey. I've been doing, oh, you mean interviews? Yeah.
Yeah.
At the police trainings.
Okay. Right. No. You've been doing this for weeks, the police trainings for years, and mourning your daughter for years as well. So I want you to have peace more than anything. Please tell me before I let you go, as you know, in as much time as you have, what have you been doing with Heather's foundation, and what do you individually see for your own future? What kind of work do you intend to do going forward?
Well, the foundation was formed to handle money that was coming in. And so it was a scholarship foundation from the get-go. We gave out over $50,000 in scholarships. This past year, we gave out $5,000 scholarships. But that's all we ever intended to be. And people would say, oh, I love the work you're doing. I'm like, what are we doing? I don't know what you think we're doing. We did briefly have an empowerment program in conjunction with Elliot Cisneros of the Sum. And we did occasionally offer small amounts of support to other organizations like, my brain is not working because I'm
Southern Poverty Law Center.
No, they actually gave us
Nice.
$50,000. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But we built an endowment, and we'll see where the direction goes from here. I'm 65, going to be 66. I had heart attacks in January. I have a lovely glucose monitor now, which I'm wearing on my arm to help me control my blood sugar, and have to hit the gym 2 or 3 times a week now. And that's all but not making it this week. I got one time this week.
Well, listen, I haven't gone since COVID, so you're way ahead of me.
Okay. And moving forward, I will continue to be officially retired, but I say mostly retired because I will still continue with the trainings. Although after interviewing with you, I don't know if they want me or not. We'll see.
I hope they still do, because again, we abolitionists are not the devils they think we are. We want health and safety for everybody, period.
That's your goal. I get it.
Correct.
I get it.
Yeah.
I am talking to you. But where my voice can be effective, that's fine. But Heather's story is 5 years ago. There's certainly been hate crimes since then. I was quite pleased to notice that white people focused, at least, however briefly, on George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and so many, unfortunately, since then, even in the past month or so. We've got to get this stopped. We have got to get this stopped. So I have no problem if people forget who I am. The work continues, whether it's got my name in it or not, and I can pass that mantle on to more appropriate shoulders. It was passed to me for a time. I wore it, but I also am not afraid to let it go to where it needs to go. This is not about me. It's not about Heather. Heather was an anonymous murder and an attempted mass murder. It was never about her. He never knew her. Nobody knew her except her friends. Charlottesville was not about Heather. Heather was after the fact. And I have had to fight tooth and nail to get people to understand that. They act like it was all about Heather. And I had a very famous artist, who I will let remain anonymous, attempt a mural with her face looking down benevolently on the Black people. Oh my God.
Goodness.
Oh my God. I was furious.
Just tell me if it's Obey.
Obey? No.
Okay. Shepherd Ferry, no? All right, never mind. Wow.
I have the lithograph still in the box.
Please send that to me. Please.
No, we're going to auction it off for some good cause.
Good idea. That could sell for a ton of money.
I wouldn't even know how. I might send it to sell off for your stuff because I don't want it.
Well, if you need help, I have a ton of connections. We'll make sure the money goes exactly where you want it. And I think we would also need to make sure that nobody used it. They just kept it. You know what I mean?
That's my problem with auctioning. If you could see my house, you see this right here?
Yeah, only the top of it.
Yeah, I can't pick it up because it's against 2 or 3 other awards.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Oh,
this one is
wow.
I'm keeping. This was painted right after she was killed.
Now that is beautiful.
But in my kitchen, leaned against the wall, because I got nowhere to put it right now.
Yeah.
And my house is full of artwork, so family's going to take some of it, but And I turned down a lot of people sending me stuff, but yeah, we'll see about that. Okay, I need to go. My aunt's
I
due
hear you.
for 5 minutes, and I really want to run the vacuum. Life.
I don't blame you. Susan, thank you so much. I'll
We'll
be
stay-
thinking, sorry, go ahead.
We'll stay in touch.
Yes, please. I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and particularly recently. You know, again, I admire the work that you do. And Heather, you know, again, the way you describe it, it wasn't about her, but she will continue to be symbolic of the work that we're all doing, and she will not be forgotten. I'll be thinking about you this weekend. Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Thank you. Hug your girls.
I
Take
will.
pictures with you in them and your loved ones together.
I hear you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.